What if the origin of humanity wasn't entirely terrestrial? What if the ancient stories passed down through sacred scriptures and stone tablets weren't simply metaphors or myth, but the remnants of real encounters with beings from beyond our world? For centuries, theologians, archaeologists, and alternative historians have debated a question that strikes at the core of our existence. Did ancient aliens influence the birth of civilization? And if so, what role did they play in the biblical narrative? The Bible, especially in its King James Version, contains passages that have baffled scholars for generations. Visions of wheels within wheels, angels descending in fiery chariots, giants walking the earth, and divine messengers with knowledge far beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, across the ancient world, the Sumerians, the first known civilization, left behind an astonishing array of cuneiform texts that speak of sky gods, advanced technology, and human creation through otherworldly intervention. These beings, known as the Anunnaki, were said to have descended from the heavens, bringing law, order, and genetic manipulation to a primitive humanity. Could there be a link between the Anunnaki of Sumerian mythology and the divine beings of the Old Testament? Are we interpreting spiritual events in the Bible without considering their potential extraterrestrial context? As wild as it may sound, the connections run deep, so deep in fact, that once you begin to see the parallels, it becomes impossible to unsee them. In this video, we will explore the controversial but captivating intersections between the Holy Scriptures and ancient Sumerian texts. Every reference will be rooted in the King James Version of the Bible, and nothing will be excluded, not even the most uncomfortable implications. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about creation, the divine, and the history of mankind. Long before Egypt built its pyramids or Greece birthed philosophy, a civilization flourished in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ancient Sumer. This cradle of civilization, nestled in what is now southern Iraq, emerged around 4500 BC and laid the foundation for nearly every hallmark of advanced society. The Sumerians invented writing, cuneiform, constructed city-states with organized governance, practiced astronomy, developed complex mathematics, and even recorded laws, myths, and epics on clay tablets that survive to this day. But their texts contain something far more astonishing than just the beginnings of bureaucracy or agriculture. They speak of gods who descended from the heavens, bringing knowledge and order to earth. These divine beings were known as the Anunnaki, meaning those who came down from the heavens. According to Sumerian records, the Anunnaki played a central role in shaping humanity. They were not abstract deities, but described in vivid anthropomorphic detail, towering figures with immense power, sometimes depicted operating advanced flying devices, wearing what resembled spacesuits, and wielding mysterious tools and weapons. The Anunnaki were believed to have come from a distant planet called Nibiru, and according to the Sumerians, they genetically engineered early humans to serve as workers, essentially upgrading Homo erectus into Homo sapiens for labor purposes. The Epic of Atrahasis, a Sumerian text predating even the Epic of Gilgamesh, outlines a story of gods creating man from clay mixed with divine blood. This theme is echoed in the book of Genesis, where in Genesis 2 verse 7, the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Are these merely coincidental myths, or did the biblical authors preserve fragments of a much older Sumerian truth? Even the Sumerian king lists, records of rulers supposedly spanning tens of thousands of years, suggest that extraordinary beings once walked among mortals. Before the Great Flood, kings were said to reign for hundreds or even thousands of years, a detail mirrored in Genesis 5, where men like Methuselah lived for centuries. Genesis 5 verse 27 records, "And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died." This correlation raises compelling questions. Were these long-lived kings actually human, or were they part of a hybrid lineage between man and God, perhaps even alien? The similarities deepen when comparing Sumerian temples or ziggurats to the biblical Tower of Babel. These were massive structures said to connect heaven and earth. In Genesis 11 verse 4, humanity says, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven." Was this simply a metaphor for ambition, or a literal attempt to connect with celestial beings as the Sumerians had tried before? And why did the Lord in Genesis 11 verse 6 respond with such urgency? "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do." The Sumerians were not merely polytheists inventing stories to explain the stars. They were meticulous chroniclers, and the clarity with which they described the Anunnaki as physical beings with hierarchical roles, tasks and interstellar origins has led many researchers to reconsider their accounts not as mythology but as misunderstood history. They saw their gods not as invisible, abstract forces but as real, walking among them, issuing commands, delivering judgments and passing down laws and calendars. Why does this matter? Because if the earliest civilization on record left detailed testimonies of contact with beings from beyond the earth, and if these testimonies mirror stories in the Bible, then the roots of our religious heritage may be entangled with a forgotten chapter of extraterrestrial influence. The implications are vast and profound. The next logical question becomes, does the Bible provide even more evidence of these visitations? The answer may lie in the prophetic visions and divine encounters recorded in its pages. Throughout the Bible, there are passages that seem to defy conventional theological explanation, accounts so vivid and unusual that they raise more questions than they answer. Among the most frequently cited is the astonishing vision found in the book of Ezekiel. In Ezekiel 1 verse 4-28, the prophet describes a sight so perplexing that even today, theologians struggle to interpret it. He sees a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, followed by living creatures with multiple faces, wheels within wheels, and the appearance of glowing metal. These are not the gentle angels of Renaissance paintings. These are beings of immense presence, descending with structured machinery and overwhelming energy, details that have led many to interpret the passage as a possible description of an extraterrestrial encounter. Another compelling account appears in the book of Genesis, where divine beings frequently interact with humans in physical, observable ways. Genesis 18 describes how the Lord appeared to Abraham in the plains of Mamre, accompanied by two others described as men. They eat, speak, and engage directly with Abraham, unmistakably physical interactions. Later, in Genesis 19, these same two men are revealed to be angels, and they arrive in Sodom, warning Lot of impending destruction. They grab him and his family by the hand, urging them to flee, and they blind the townsmen who try to attack them. These are not ethereal apparitions. These are entities with power, purpose, and physical presence. Jacob's encounter in Genesis 32, verse 24-30, is equally enigmatic. He wrestles with a man all night until dawn. By the end of the struggle, Jacob declares, "I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved." The idea that a man can physically wrestle with a divine being and prevail is staggering. What kind of being allows such a tangible interaction? Was this man a theophany, an angel, or something more complex? Then there is the story of Elijah. In 2 Kings 2 verse 11, it says, "And it came to pass as they still went on, and talked, that behold there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven." A fiery vehicle appearing out of the sky, taking a prophet upward in a storm. The scene bears remarkable resemblance to the modern conception of a craft descending and ascending, something more technological than mystical. Daniel's visions also contain references to strange messengers. In Daniel 10, the prophet sees a man clothed in linen, whose face had the appearance of lightning, with eyes like torches, and a voice like the sound of a multitude. Daniel collapses in fear at the sight. These visitations aren't subtle. They're overwhelming, almost traumatic experiences involving brilliant light, unnatural sounds, and contact with beings who radiate power. The New Testament offers its own examples. In Acts 1 verse 9-11, as Jesus ascends into heaven, a cloud received him out of their sight, and two men in white appear, asking why the disciples are gazing up. The implication of structured motion, observers from above, and ascending figures continues the same strange motif, divine beings arriving and departing in ways that echo flight and physical transport. Taken together, these passages present a series of divine encounters that are consistently physical, luminous, and overwhelming to witnesses. These are not dreamlike metaphors. They are structured, repeatable, and often involve transport, technology, or messages from beings of uncertain origin. When we place these biblical events beside the ancient Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki, the similarities are too compelling to ignore. Are these simply spiritual manifestations, or could they be historical records of ancient interactions with otherworldly beings? One of the most enigmatic passages in the entire Bible is found in Genesis 6 verse 1-4. It reads, "And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. These verses introduce the Nephilim, giant hybrids born of human women and divine beings. But who exactly were these sons of God, and what kind of offspring did they produce? Mainstream interpretations often suggest the sons of God were angels. However, this view encounters serious theological complications. Angels, as traditionally understood, are spiritual beings without the capacity for reproduction. Yet the text clearly indicates physical union and biological consequence. This has led many researchers to propose a far more controversial possibility that the sons of God were not angels in a metaphorical sense, but physical beings, perhaps even the same type described by the Sumerians as the Anunnaki. The idea that these beings came from the heavens, interacted directly with humans, and altered the human gene pool aligns perfectly with the ancient Sumerian narrative. According to Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki not only created humanity, but also experimented with human genetics, striving to perfect or modify mankind. The Epic of Gilgamesh mentions beings of great stature and power, hybrids between divine and mortal. In this context, the Nephilim are not merely literary giants, but biological evidence of interbreeding between Earth's early humans and powerful extraterrestrial visitors. Consider also the Book of Enoch, a text excluded from the biblical canon, but widely read in ancient times. Enoch expands on the Genesis account, describing 200 watchers, heavenly beings, who descended upon Mount Hermon and took human wives. Their children were massive giants who corrupted the earth, consuming its resources and spreading violence. Though not part of the King James Version, Enoch's account complements and amplifies the implications of Genesis. It is no surprise that this book was considered too dangerous or heretical to be included in the official canon. Furthermore, the result of these unions is catastrophic. Genesis 6 verse 5 tells us, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and it grieved him at his heart." The flood narrative follows almost immediately after, as if to cleanse the world of this unnatural hybrid corruption. In Genesis 6 verse 13, "And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, behold, I will destroy them with the earth." The timing is critical. The presence of the Nephilim and the judgment of the flood are not separate stories, but intimately linked. Interestingly, Sumerian myths also recount a great flood sent by the gods to wipe out corrupted humanity, specifically those who defied divine order. In both traditions, a survivor is chosen and instructed to build a vessel. In the Bible, it is Noah. In the Sumerian texts, it is Zu-Sudra, or Ut-Napishtim. The parallel is undeniable, and it strongly suggests a shared memory of global catastrophe tied to the acts of powerful non-human entities. If the Nephilim were the hybrid children of divine beings and human women, then the Anunnaki's role in genetic manipulation may not just be mythology, it might be history. These stories raise unsettling yet fascinating questions. Did ancient extraterrestrials seed humanity with knowledge, strength, and perhaps even their own DNA? Were these giants the result of forbidden experiments? Whether interpreted as divine rebellion, alien engineering, or both, the Nephilim and the Anunnaki stand as pillars in humanity's earliest stories. They are not isolated myths, but intersecting accounts from different parts of the ancient world, speaking of a time when beings from the heavens walked among men and changed the course of history forever. When examining both biblical and Sumerian texts, one cannot ignore the references to knowledge and technology that appear far beyond what ancient civilizations should have possessed. The question that naturally arises is, where did this knowledge come from? Did humanity stumble upon it independently, or was it handed down, perhaps by beings who had traveled across the stars? In Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were not just rulers or gods, they were bringers of knowledge. They taught humans how to cultivate the land, build cities, organize laws, and measure the heavens. This wasn't simple mythological instruction, it was scientific, astronomical, and architectural precision. They introduced the concept of a 360-degree circle, identified celestial bodies invisible to the naked eye, and aligned their temples with cosmic movements. How could a primitive society know such things unless it was taught? In parallel, the Bible contains mysterious references to objects and concepts that suggest advanced knowledge. One of the most enigmatic is the Ark of the Covenant. Described in Exodus 25, the Ark was not just a container for stone tablets. It was built to exact specifications, overlaid with gold inside and out, and topped with 2 cherubim. When carried improperly, it resulted in death. In 2 Samuel 6 verse 7, when Uzzah touched the ark to steady it, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. Was this divine punishment, or an electrical discharge from a highly charged device? Some researchers have likened the ark to a capacitor or energy source, potentially a communication or power device far beyond the technology of ancient Israel. Its presence in battle brought victories. Its absence caused panic. It was not merely symbolic, it was feared, revered, and controlled with exact ritual. If the Ark was a remnant of alien technology, then its influence on the ancient Israelites was far more than spiritual. Another curious example is the construction of the Tower of Babel. As recorded in Genesis 11, humanity united to build a structure whose top may reach unto heaven. This was not a poetic metaphor. In ancient Mesopotamia, ziggurats served as cosmic bridges between earth and sky. The biblical narrative mirrors this tradition, yet it goes further. Genesis 11 verse 6 says, "And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do." That is a profound statement. It suggests the builders were accessing something dangerous, knowledge or power that was beyond their rightful domain. If we return to the Sumerian worldview, the Tower of Babel could be interpreted not merely as rebellion, but as an attempt to reclaim communication with the Anunnaki, or even to reach their domain. The abrupt intervention by God in the story, confusing languages and scattering mankind, is remarkably similar to ancient accounts of divine beings deliberately limiting human progress to maintain control. Ancient texts from both traditions also describe objects that could be seen as flying machines. In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet witnesses what could be interpreted as a craft descending from the sky. In Sumerian art and inscriptions, the gods ride in skyboats or fiery chariots. They are not ethereal wisps, but tangible beings with technology capable of lifting them off the earth. These consistent images across cultures and time periods suggest a shared, if dimly remembered, experience of advanced aerial transportation. If the Anunnaki were indeed extraterrestrials, and if the divine encounters in the Bible were interactions with similar entities, then humanity's early leaps in knowledge may not have been accidental. They may have been engineered, offered as gifts or tools for control. The ancient world was far more advanced than we often credit, not just in terms of intellect, but possibly in its access to technologies we no longer understand. These fragments of forgotten science, hidden in holy scriptures and mythic stone, invite us to reconsider the origins of wisdom. Were the first laws calendars and machines born of human effort alone, or were they whispers from the stars, encoded in the myths of Sumer and the prophecies of Israel? No topic straddles the line between revelation and heresy quite like the suggestion that extraterrestrial beings may have influenced the Bible. For every researcher who finds compelling evidence of alien intervention in sacred texts, there are theologians, historians, and scientists who reject the notion outright. The divide is not simply academic, it's emotional, spiritual, and deeply personal. The idea that angels, gods, or even the Lord himself could be reinterpreted as advanced beings from another world threatens the very foundation of millennia-old belief systems. Critics argue that interpreting the Bible through an ancient alien lens is a distortion, a modern myth imposed on ancient texts. They contend that symbols such as chariots of fire or wheels within wheels were never meant to be taken literally, but were poetic attempts to describe divine experiences. From this perspective, the Bible is a spiritual document, not a historical or scientific one. To look for spacecraft in its verses, they say, is to miss the point entirely. Yet even within scholarly circles, there is acknowledgement that many biblical events remain unexplained by conventional history. The dramatic interventions, inexplicable technologies, sudden bursts of knowledge, and the presence of powerful beings who come and go with celestial phenomena, all these things invite alternative interpretations. And while the ancient alien theory may not provide all the answers, it at least asks the right questions. Why are there so many parallels between biblical narratives and Sumerian myths? Why do so many cultures share stories of sky beings, floods, and star-born rulers? Then there are those within the religious community who see no conflict between faith and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. They argue that if God created the heavens and the earth, then the existence of life beyond our planet is not a threat, but a logical extension of divine creation. In this view, angels, cherubim, and even the Lord's messengers could be beings from other realms or dimensions, acting within God's plan. This perspective reframes the ancient alien hypothesis not as opposition to faith, but as an expansion of it. Nevertheless, caution is essential. The field is rife with speculative claims, poorly sourced theories, and exaggerated connections. Not every ancient carving is a spacesuit. Not every biblical metaphor is a technical manual. True investigation requires humility, an acknowledgement that we are still far from understanding the full truth of our origins. Whether one believes in angels or aliens, the pursuit of truth must be grounded in rigorous study, open-minded curiosity, and respect for the texts themselves. Ultimately, the power of this investigation lies not in providing definitive answers, but in reigniting the human desire to seek, to question, and to understand. The Bible and the Sumerian tablets are more than historical artifacts. They are keys to a forgotten dialogue between the earth and the heavens. Whether that dialogue was spiritual, extraterrestrial, or both is a matter still debated. But what cannot be denied is that something extraordinary happened in humanity's early history. Knowledge was passed down, the skies were watched, and beings beyond human understanding shaped the destinies of nations. The truth behind it all may still be waiting, hidden in ancient language, buried beneath desert sands, or simply ignored in plain sight. Across the vast span of ancient history, two narratives rise above the noise, one preserved in the sacred pages of the Bible, the other etched into the clay tablets of ancient Sumer. At first glance, they seem like separate stories from two different worlds. But when studied side by side, a strange resonance begins to emerge. Common themes of divine beings descending from the heavens, mankind shaped by external forces, catastrophic floods, advanced knowledge, and the presence of giants who once walked the earth. In the King James Version of the Bible, we find accounts that, when stripped of their religious framing, resemble encounters with powerful entities, beings that arrive with fire, sound, and light, who teach, judge, intervene, and vanish into the clouds. In the Sumerian records, we find similar beings, described not as gods of metaphor, but as rulers with physical form, mission and origin beyond our skies. The Anunnaki and the sons of God, the Nephilim and the giants of old, the chariots of fire and the flying crafts of the gods, all these echo through both traditions. This video has not aimed to replace faith with conspiracy, nor to diminish the sacred by recasting it as science fiction. Instead, it has sought to open a door to new questions, broader interpretations, and a richer understanding of what may have truly occurred in Earth's forgotten past. Whether you believe these accounts point to extraterrestrials, divine messengers, or symbolic truths, one thing is certain: the story of humanity is far more mysterious than we have been led to believe. If the Bible and the Sumerian texts are two halves of the same ancient memory, then rediscovering their shared truths may help us uncover who we really are, where we truly come from, and who or what walked with us in those first days. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into forbidden history and hidden truths.